Hey everyone, welcome to another sit down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is good, very blessed on this end. And as always, my friends, I give all the praise, honor, glory, and thanksgiving to our God for that. The confidential, classified Kennedy documents. That's what we're talking about right now. It's all over the news. Everybody's talking about it. I did a piece on Piers Morgan earlier. It's big news, and rightfully so. It should be. For those of you that are not my age, you weren't born when Kennedy was killed, I got to tell you this. Back in 1963, I was 12 years old. And I'll never forget, I was sitting out on my patio in the backyard of my house in Long Island. We had moved at that point. And that's all I heard. Kennedy was shot. Kennedy was shot. It was on television. I walked in the house and my father, who was in there talking to my mother, and I'm going to tie this in later on. My mother said, "Oh my God, Kennedy is shot. What a shame." And my father looked at her and said, what do you mean a shame? That rat, whatever name he called him, I don't want to say, he should be dead. My father said it just like that. I'll never forget. I was kind of surprised. I didn't question him about it. But, and I'm going to tie this in later on. What also happened at that point, we didn't have cable TV. We didn't have social media, obviously. We didn't have smartphones or anything like that. All we had was network television. And for the next several days, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, I don't remember how long, it might have been longer than that, on network television, every other show was preempted, and all we saw was information and video and things about Kennedy. The entire news, 24/7, it didn't stop, nonstop, all about Kennedy, to a point where I'm a 12-year-old kid. It's like, enough already. You would go out in the streets, neighbors, people were crying. They were in mourning over this. This was a huge, huge, huge deal, this assassination attempt. And why am I saying this? Because here we are 63 years later, and we still don't have all the information. Why are we, the American public, not entitled to this? Why not? They're going to give you all sorts of excuses. Well, there's, classified information and we can't reveal certain things. Why not? If this was a plot by Cuba, if this was a plot by Russia, if there were other, why shouldn't we know about this? We're entitled to know about this. It leads me to believe, and I'm going to get into it a little bit more, this is a huge cover-up. The Warren Commission, a huge cover-up. All right? The information not being given to us, a huge cover-up. Redacted statements, a cover-up. All of this leads to that. And as we see more of these classified documents, I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to come to that conclusion. There's been a lot of conspiracy theories, but maybe some of these issues are going to be cleared up right now. Now, I'm going to speak about two things. I'm going to talk about some of the information that was released today. They're saying there's no bombshells, nothing, tremendous, but there are some things that are very interesting, and they tie in together. And then I want to talk about the mob's involvement in this or non-involvement. Some of you believe it didn't happen. A lot of people saying it didn't happen. The Warren Commission said no, the mob wasn't involved. I 100% disagree with that, and I'm going to tell you why, based upon the knowledge that I have and the people that I've spoken to throughout my life with respect to this, my father included, and other people that were even higher up than my dad, because I spent 20 years in that life. We did a lot of conversation during this point about Kennedy and about other things. So I want to get into that. Also, Robert Kennedy recently did an interview, and in that interview, he refuted, said the mob had nothing to do with this, and he went on and on and on. I like RFK Jr. I like him. I think he's going to do a great job now in the position that he's in to make our country healthier again. However, I have some issues with some of the things that he said, and I'm going to respond to that. So we're going to get into both of that. I'm going to be following this quite a bit. And people, I'm going to tell you this. I can't do it all on YouTube. I only have certain boundaries that I have to follow on YouTube. But I'm really into this. And if you want to hear more about this, I'm going to get documentation and all of that. We're going to really follow it, in depth. Go to my platform, go to the link below, go to my platform, join the platform. We're going to get into this, heavily, but I'm going to do a lot of it now. I want you to know that. So let's talk first about some of the things that we found out just today. And I have notes here, so I'm going to read them. I don't want to miss anything. But here's something that we found out today. Let me take this off. My friends, I know something about having power. Whether it's on the streets or in the media, it's all about who controls the narrative. And right now, the mainstream media is trying to control yours, whether you realize it or not. I've been using this platform called Ground News, and it's completely changed how I look at the news. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Remember the Hunter Biden pardon story? How can we forget it? It was everywhere. Well, over 1,000 news sources covered that same story, but watch what happens when we compare headlines from the different outlets. You see how each one spins it differently? That's what makes ground news different. They're the only platform that lets you see exactly how the media machine works, and yes, it is a machine. They break down the political bias of every source. They show you which stories are being buried by different sides, and this is crucial. They expose who actually owns these news organizations, and that makes a difference, a big difference in how it's reported. In today's world, you can't afford to be in the dark. Ground news gives you something invaluable, and that is the ability to see through the smoke and mirrors and the gaslighting of mainstream media. Right now, you can get the same tools I use for half price. Just go to ground.news/MF or scan this QR code where you'll get 40% off their premium Vantage plan. Come on, that's less than a cup of coffee for the same tools I use to stay informed. You know, with everything that's happening in our country right now, so much going on, you need to see the full picture, not just what they want you to see. So don't wait on this. Take control of your information today. You want to be in the know the right way? Get to Ground News. It's an offer that you shouldn't refuse. There were the two CIA agents that had involvement with Lee Harvey Oswald. One of them, this guy by the name of Englewood or Angleton, I think his name was, he recruited Lee Harvey Oswald when he was 20 years old. They had a dossier on Lee Harvey Oswald for many, many years, right up until the assassination of Kennedy. Right up. So they were following this guy. They were watching him. They were following him. You know, there was another agent also who had involvement with him. Now, this tells me one thing. Either the CIA was somehow involved and complicit with Oswald with respect to the assassination, or they were terribly inept. Terribly. They didn't follow this guy enough, because if you're following him for several months and you have a dossier and you have all this information on him, you know that he visited Cuba, you know that he visited Russia. Why are you not following him? What is he doing? Why? So either they were terribly inept or they had something to do with Oswald and the assassination. Now, we know, we've heard this, okay, I'm not going to get into full detail. Kennedy did not like the CIA. He was upset with them over the Bay of Pigs. Kennedy did not like the Secret Service. He badmouthed them on many occasions. I understand the Secret Service did not like him. So there's a couple of things here that, you know, are going to add up in some way. And again, this is not a conspiracy theory. These are things now that we're putting together. And let's see how much of the documentation we really get and what they really say. How much is redacted? How much are missing? I understand Pam Bondi got 2,000 more pages of documents, or 2,000 more documents that, newly revealed by the FBI that they didn't know even existed before. So let me start to read some of this stuff first about what we've uncovered recently. And then I want to go into RFK's interview with respect to the mob and the involvement with JFK. And I'm going to tell you what, my feeling is on it, what he had to say. Okay. So again, we see Oswald had visited the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City weeks before the assassination. Why was he doing that? We don't know. Okay. But maybe this is all going to come together. Higher-ups dismissed these concerns despite clear warning signs. Files suggest the CIA was either complicit or incompetent, like I said earlier, in handling intelligence prior to the assassination. Evidence of a second shooter. We know all along they've been talking about a second shooter. And I have to say this. People, understand this. I don't know if you know this, but do you know that JFK's brain, after the assassination, after the autopsy, was placed in the National Archives? Do you know they claim it was lost? Lost. How do they lose the brain of our president that was placed in the National Archives and say it was lost? Not stolen, not some, mischievous thing happening, but lost. I'm sorry, I can't believe that. How do you lose a brain? What did you do with it? Take it out and, leave it in the bathroom by mistake or bring it out in your car? I mean, this is ridiculous. If that brain is missing, there's a reason why. Or, let's think of this. Maybe it was never really his brain to begin with that they put in the National Archives. Either way, this is ridiculous. And maybe because there was a second shooter. They're saying that, that he bounced back in the car. Well, if he got shot from behind, why did he bounce back? Why didn't he just go forward and drop? So there's a lot of different things. I don't want to get into the conspiracy theories, but it's pretty shady and suspicious that the brain was lost. I don't know if you know this. It wasn't lost. Obviously, somebody got rid of the brain for whatever reason. Let's keep going. New files contradict the Warren Commission's lone gunman theory. All right, that's what we're finding out. Ballistic reports and witness testimonies indicate the official timeline, 3 shots in 8.6 seconds, does not add up. So again, another shooter. And remember, the Warren Commission said no, it was only Oswald. That was it, period. Now I'm going to tie this together. Documents suggest a shot may have come from the grassy knoll, which meant that he would have been shot in his forehead, in front, not behind. Previously suppressed statement from a Dallas bystander who was forced to remain silent by government agents said that they saw somebody on the grassy knoll with a shot. Supports the House Select Committee on Assassination's 1979 conclusion of a high probability of a second shooter. So why did the Warren Commission gloss this over? Why? I'm going to tie that in. Okay, let's get to some of the mafia connections according to what we're finding out now, and I'm going to add my 2 cents worth on this. Number one, wiretap transcripts suggest organized crime involvement in the assassination plot. There's no question about that. Sam Giancana was heard on tape in a wiretap saying, "We killed the wrong Kennedy." He hated Robert Kennedy. We all hated Robert Kennedy. My father hated Robert Kennedy. My father believed until the day he died that it was Robert Kennedy that caused him all his trouble, that started all these investigations, and you know why. My dad allegedly had an affair with Marilyn Monroe. That's what he told me. I wasn't there to witness it, but it does make sense because prior to that, J. Edgar Hoover would never even admit that the mafia existed. All of a sudden, Robert F. Kennedy, after him having an affair with Marilyn Monroe, so they say, and I think there's enough evidence to prove that or to support that, Marilyn Monroe talked about my father, and at that point, Robert F. Kennedy called up Hoover and said, "Get this guy." And boy, did they get him. My father believes that. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but this is something that he told me, and I have to say, I put some weight on this. I really do. Okay, let's keep going. Mob bosses discussed the need to take care of Kennedy. No doubt, it's all over wiretaps that they spoke, that they heard, discussions about taking care of Kennedy. Why? We hated Kennedy. When I say we, I'm going back to my former life for a number of reasons. Number one, this is the truth, 100%, that the mob in Chicago and even in New York was complicit in this or helped in this, helped John F. Kennedy win the election in 1960, I think it was, against Richard Nixon. It was razor, razor, razor tight. The victory JFK had was razor thin, and it was because Chicago and Illinois was supported him. And I know a lot of people are saying different things. Well, how could the mob do that? We had tremendous control in Chicago, going back to the days of Al Capone, and even until today. It's just it's a corrupt town in many, many ways. So yes, and the deal was made with Joseph Kennedy. I'm going to get into that a little bit more when I talk about RFK and what he had to say. The deal was made with Joseph Kennedy that if we delivered the state of Illinois to JFK, then we would have, number one, certain access to the White House through Joe Kennedy. That's what we believed. And number two, the Attorney General would stay off of us. Leave us alone. We didn't want any law enforcement on us. Naturally, they had to do a few things to make believe that they were doing something, but they weren't going to come after us a hard way, the same way Hoover didn't come after us in a hard way. I heard that my entire life. There's no reason for people in the know, Persico, Fat Tony, my father, Joe Colombo even, there was no reason for them to tell me this. Other people that were around at that time, they don't brag about things like this, not guys in that level. They don't. They don't talk about it. I heard it consistently in discussions my whole life. I even heard things how it was planned. And let me get to this. Jack Ruby. The Warren Commission said that Jack Ruby had no mob affiliation or association whatsoever. That's an absolute lie. It's a lie. 100% lie. He was absolutely linked with us going back to the days of Al Capone and Sam Giancana in Chicago. And even Tony Accardo. And he also had affiliations with Carlos Marcello. He was running strip clubs for Carlos Marcello out of New Orleans. He was in Dallas. And he had a designated person, I forget the guy's name, mob guy, very close with Marcellus, that he was answering to. He was a thug, 100%. The guy was a thug, and he was totally mobbed up, without a doubt. I want to get into a little bit more on the Warren Commission, and everybody has denied that Jack Ruby had any kind of mob involvement. And if you see that in any of these reports, throw the report out. It's garbage. I'm telling you right now, because they're lying. Let's keep going. There were documents that linked Chicago mob bosses to training Cuban militiamen. I never heard that. I never knew that, I'll be honest with you. And this is just more evidence, more information to show the mob's involvement that I'm going to get into in a minute. It suggests a possible coalition between mobsters, anti-Castro Cubans, and rogue CIA elements. Now, let me tell you something about this. The CIA, this is a fact, it's been documented, it's a matter of public record, that the CIA came to us on at least two occasions. At least two occasions. Number one, they came to Lucky Luciano through Meyer Lansky, and they needed help through World War II. They wanted the armed forces, the Allied forces, to be able to land in Sicily, and Luciano, who had tremendous leverage there, he allowed that to happen. The CIA came to him. Okay, that's number one. Fact. Number two, when they wanted to assassinate Castro after the revolution, they came to us again. And there was a plot to poison Castro. It didn't work out, but they absolutely came to us. Fact, documented, no dispute. The evidence is there to support it. So what happened here is that I believe it's definitely somebody from the government. I have to believe it's the CIA. Do I have any direct evidence of an actual CIA agent? No. But was I told it was the CIA? Yes. Definitely a government official or government people that came to the mob and said, listen, we got something going. We need to assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald. Why? Well, because he wasn't just a patsy, but he had information that they didn't want anybody to know. So they came to us to help in that regard. And so who do we designate? Jack Ruby, who's in Dallas, who's totally connected, he was paying off police in his strip clubs to stay around. He had all these connections. That's why he was able to get into the police station. And he was the one guy into the police station with a gun. He got into the station. And when they brought Lee Harvey Oswald through, Jack Ruby went through the crowd and boom, shot him. 100%. No question. That was all over television. We saw it live. Jack Ruby was designated by the mob out of Chicago, okay, and Giancana was involved in this, no doubt, okay, to assassinate Lee Harvey Oswald. And you know what? We didn't care about the Kennedys at that point. Not at all, because they broke their word. Robert F. Kennedy came after us in a big way. You know, the whole thing with Hoffa. He came after Sam Giancana. He dropped him in the middle of a forest or something. You know, we hated RFK. We hated the Kennedys at that point. Why wouldn't we go along with it? 100%. We did it. It was revenge. Sam Giancana, we shot the wrong Kennedy, or we killed the wrong Kennedy. It's on tape. Why would he make an admission like that? Because it really happened. It's the truth. So anytime they try to deny that, and if that doesn't appear anywhere in these documents, or if they say Jack Ruby had no mob affiliation, it's a lie. They're covering up something. So here's my belief on this from everything that I've heard my life, you know, from the time I was old enough to hear it, 12 years old when my father made that statement that I never tied into anything. I was 12 years old until later on when I had discussions with my dad. And he and I talked privately. And my dad had nothing to do with it, but my dad was the underboss of the Colombo family. He knew what was going on. And that was right then and there, in the 60s. That was my dad's time. So from then to everybody else that I heard it from, in discussions, just sitting down, if we were playing, in a back room, and I even asked a question a couple of times about it, 100% mob hit. Jack Ruby was designated to kill Oswald to help the government at that point in time because they hated the Kennedys. That, you can take that to the bank, and I don't care what anybody else says. And I want to see what happens in those documents. Let me continue. Potential motive, revenge for Kennedy's perceived betrayal during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Now that's out there. This is some things that they're finding now. This is what's coming out in the reports in a way. Additional bombshells. They're saying a CIA memo reveals that certain officer funneled $25,000 to an anti-Castro group linked to Oswald. Okay? Where was the CIA? Were they that incompetent? Or were they allowing Oswald, or were they promoting Oswald to do this? Okay? Evidence of intensified CIA surveillance of Oswald's Cuban intelligence contacts with no subsequent action. So they knew he's dealing with Cuba. Cuba's our enemy. They're communists. Remember the Bay of Pigs? Okay, Russia wanted to put missiles in Cuba. This was what it was all about. Why did they leave Oswald alone? Are they that incompetent, or were they promoting him to do what he was doing because they hated the Kennedys? FBI record of a phone call predicting Oswald's murder by Jack Ruby before it happened. Listen to what I just said. Let me read it again. FBI record of a phone call predicting Oswald's murder by Jack Ruby before it even happened. It suggests foreknowledge of events that were not disclosed to investigation committees. Now, why were they not disclosed? Maybe what I'm saying is correct. Maybe what I've heard all my life was correct. That they knew in advance that Jack Ruby was the designated shooter to kill Oswald. Perfect guy. Has his base in Dallas, mob connected, knows the police, paying them off. He does the deal. So, the conclusion here, it's becoming more evident that there was government involvement here. Now, I understand there was a phone call between Johnson and someone else right after the killing that we don't know. We don't have a record of that call yet, but it could be very telling because, again, theories that Johnson was somehow involved in this. I don't know about that. I never heard it, and I'm not going to suggest anything. We'll see if anything like that comes out. But what are we concluding so far? The Warren Commission was not on the level. Absolutely not. Very strong evidence of a second shooter. Very strong evidence that the CIA was either totally incompetent because they had their mark on Oswald, or they were promoting Oswald to let him do what he did. And makes perfect sense that they had to get rid of him afterwards. They didn't trust him. They didn't know what he was going to say. So they make a deal with the mob who hated the Kennedys, and they designate Jack Ruby, and Jack Ruby eliminates Oswald. Now there was nobody else at that point, okay, that could blow the whistle on them because Oswald was working with the CIA. Remember that. He was working with the CIA. All right, so that's what we know so far. Okay, we know this. CIA, very shady, most likely involved in this. We're going to see. Mob, I can tell you definitely, and now the evidence is coming out to support it. They knew Jack Ruby was the shooter. They have it on tape. Mob talking about taking Kennedy out. Sam Giancana, we killed the wrong Kennedy. It goes on and on and on. I think the evidence supporting what I know to be true all my life is coming forward. Now, let's get to Robert F. Kennedy. And I'm going to get into this in great detail. I'm going to get the documentation. We're going to go through it because this is very, very interesting. And hey, this was a president. He was beloved, Camelot, Jackie Kennedy, the whole bit. We should be able to know exactly what happened here. We're entitled to that. And I don't care what they say about, classified information. No, let's substitute the right word, cover up. That's what this is, cover up. Let's go to Robert F. Kennedy and some of the things that he said. Now, again, I want you to understand, I like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I really do. I'm very supportive of his nomination, his appointment, I should say, to the position that he's got now. I think he's going to help make America healthy again. I'm supportive of him, but I want to go through this interview and talk about some of the things that he said. Okay, this was a recent one. Joseph Kennedy and the bootlegging rumors. RFK Jr. denies the bootlegging allegations against his grandfather, Joseph Kennedy, and this was his quote from Robert F. Kennedy. Now, I just want to address this rumor because from what I understand, it's not true. There was always the rumor that he was involved in liquor bootlegging, and he was not. Okay, I have to respectfully disagree with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I heard this directly from my father. I heard it from Persico. I heard it from Colombo. He absolutely was a bootlegger, and I was even told that he was tied up with Frank Costello and that Frank Costello wanted to kill him at one point because of a deal that went bad or because he didn't trust him, whatever. I heard that. I heard it several times, and that's why Joe Kennedy had connections with the mob. It was his connection that helped get the state of Illinois delivered to John F. Kennedy for that election. Okay, so I respectfully disagree with that. I would take that to my grave. I believe it 100% based upon what I know. Let's keep going. He explains further that Joseph Kennedy legally entered the liquor business by purchasing pinch whiskey in Scotland just before the repeal of Prohibition. Well, and here's what he had to say. The way that Prohibition ended is you had to have 26 states disavow Prohibition in order to hold to the Constitution. So when it got close, they knew it was coming. So he went over to Scotland and he bought pinch whiskey. He did it with James Roosevelt, who was the president's son. Okay, but did he just do that out of the blue? He may have done that. But he was a bootlegger before. He knew how lucrative the business was. He worked with these guys. He was a bootlegger. So it would make sense after he made all that money bootlegging that he said, hey, let me buy a legitimate deal. I'm a Kennedy. I'm going to have my sons run for public office. Let me buy a legitimate liquor company. It ties in. There's nothing in there that says that he wasn't a bootlegger. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. just said he's denying the rumor. All right, let's keep going with respect to that. RFK Jr. claims the CIA spread the bootlegging rumor after JFK's assassination to deflect from their own possible involvement. Well, they may have talked about it, but remember, if they're dealing with the mob, they also knew, of Joe Kennedy's involvement with the mob and with bootlegging. They knew, no doubt. So here's what he had to say, RFK. He was never accused of being a bootlegger until after he had his stroke and couldn't defend himself, and my uncle was killed. That was in 1964. At that point, the CIA was trying to, let's say, disparage the rumors that they may have had something to do with President Kennedy's assassination. Well, maybe they were covering it up, the fact that he was a bootlegger, until after the assassination. Maybe they covered up, not that they spread a rumor, but maybe they covered it up, that he was a bootlegger because this was a political family and they didn't want that to get out. But afterwards, they didn't care and they let it go. So nothing that Robert F. Kennedy is saying really refutes or disputes anything that I'm saying about the mob's involvement and about Joe Kennedy being a bootlegger. Let's go on. RFK Jr. refutes the claim that the Chicago Mafia helped JFK win the presidency and was later betrayed when RFK cracked down on organized crime. I totally disagree with him on that, and I've stated why. But here's what RFK said. Everybody who's looked at this issue, and there are a lot of writers out there who would have liked to find some evidence. There's a guy called David Horowitz who spent years looking for that evidence and finally said, it's not there. It didn't happen. Well, did he not look at Jack Ruby, the killer of Oswald? Did he not realize that Jack Ruby was totally mobbed up? Did he not hear that the tape recording? Did he not hear any of the surveillance documents that prove or that show that the mob had involvement here? Did they not hear Sam Giancana's recording saying, we killed the wrong Kennedy? He didn't do such great investigative work on my part. The evidence is there that the mob was involved. And if he didn't look into Jack Ruby, or he did look into Jack Ruby and said there was no connection, then the guy, I'm sorry, he's out there. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Explains that R.F. Kennedy humiliated and prosecuted Sam Giancana, making it unlikely that the mafia would later help JFK. Yeah, well, he did, but Sam Giancana wasn't the boss. If word came down from above, and Tony Accardo, and word came down from above that, hey, we want access to the White House and we want R.F. Kennedy to lay off of us. So this is how we're going to do it. It makes sense the other way. Okay, RFK was all over Sam Giancana. So to get them to back off, we help them with this plot. Works both ways, right? The hatred, okay, let me get this guy off my back because he's destroying us here, between Hoffa and everybody else, destroying us. Okay, so again, doesn't refute the fact that the mob was involved. RFK Jr. dismisses the idea that JFK's presidency was secured by mafia support. Now, what people are saying, this is a quote from him, is 6 months after that hearing, somehow my father, who was my uncle's campaign manager, then cuts a deal with Sam Giancana, who he ridiculed, who he's putting in jail, who he's attacked for years, and they make up, and Sam Giancana gives my uncle the White House. It doesn't make any sense. Sam Giancana wasn't the boss, number one. Tony Accardo was. That's number one. And secondly, people, it makes sense both ways. if there was a deal cut by the CIA who came to him and said, we're going to get RFK off your back. May have been unknown to RFK. I'm not saying RFK knew about that. I don't think he did. Obviously, he's not going to know that the CIA is plotting to kill his brother. But if they go to Giancana and they go to Accardo anyway and they say, hey, we'll get RFK off your back. We're the CIA. We'll back them off. You help us out in this. Makes perfect sense. So I'm telling you the opposite of what RFK said. In order to get Robert F. Kennedy off of the mob's back, we help the CIA and they do the rest of the work. They get him off. Makes perfect sense. So I think RFK Jr.'s got this a little bit off. And again, this is what he heard. This is what he heard. RFK Jr. confirms that his father led an aggressive campaign against the mafia, increasing organized crime convictions by 800%. Absolutely. Quote, my father really felt that it was the gravest threat to American democracy because the mafia had infiltrated all of these institutions that were part of our democracy, including the labor unions, but also the judiciary. They controlled a lot of judges. They owned a lot of congresspeople. Without a doubt, RFK was all over us. He's actually confirming what I'm saying. So to get RFK off our back, what do? We make a deal with the CIA to help them out, and they say they're going to back off Kennedy. That's the deal. Jimmy Hoffa was RFK's biggest enemy, and Hoffa even hired people to assassinate him. I agree with that. Quote from RFK Jr. Hoffa hired a guy to shoot him in the swimming pool because my father swam every morning, and he hired another guy to firebomb our house to kill our whole family. Well, wouldn't you then want to get these guys off your back in any way you possibly could? Sam Giancana, we killed the wrong Kennedy. He made that statement. It all fits in. RFK Jr. is not refuting the mob's involvement here. He's actually confirming it. Describes how the Teamsters harassed RFK family by constantly honking truck horns outside their house. Quote, our house was surrounded by roads, and all day long there would be trucks going around our place blowing their horns from the Teamsters Union. Absolutely, but understand this, the Teamsters Union, the members did what they were told. If they were told vote the other way, they vote the other way. They did what they were told. We owned the Teamsters. 100%. They did what we told them to do. I don't think there's any dispute with that. Okay, JFK assassination and mafia theories. RFK Jr. reveals his father's first reaction to JFK's assassination was to ask if the CIA was responsible. Again, this is just confirming it. Quote, my father asked John McCone, who was head of the CIA, did the CIA do this to my brother? Why would RFK ask that? Why? Think about that. Why would he even think of that? Because he knew the CIA hated his brother. Hated him. RFK Jr. believes the Warren Commission's lone gunman theory is false. Okay? Quote, nothing about Lee Harvey Oswald's life or the evidence suggests that he could have possibly been acting alone. We agree with that. Agree. There's good evidence that there was another shooter. The brain is gone. Kennedy goes back in the car. We can see it on video. If he was shot alone from the back of his head, he would have went down. If he even got the shot in, Oswald, who knows? So we agree with that. Suggests that Jack Ruby, who killed Oswald, had deep ties to the mafia. He's confirming it. Listen to what he's saying. Quote, from JFK Jr., Jack Ruby worked for the mafia. He ran a strip club with what they called B-girls, women who were part of Carlos Marcello's organization. He is agreeing with that. So why did the Warren Commission say that Jack Ruby had no involvement with the mob? Do you see this? Here's RFK Jr. saying his father agreed that Jack Ruby, who would know more than him, he was the lead investigator against the mafia. He knew that Ruby had connections to the mob. So then why is RFK Jr. saying the mob wasn't involved in this at all? It's not making sense. He's kind of contradicting himself there. And again, I'm not going out against him. This is what he was told and this is what he heard. I believe RFK Jr. would be, honest. And if he knew that the mob was involved, he'd say it. Why not? I think he's just being misled at this point. Okay, well, you know what? I hope that says enough right now. RFK Jr. is actually confirming the mob's involvement here. So, people, look, I think this adds a lot of legitimacy to everything that I've been saying, and I've repeated this several times. I repeated it on Piers Morgan. I think I talked about it with, some other people on Fox. And, I've said it time and time again. And people, again, I have no horse in this game. Nobody's paying me for this. I have nothing to gain other than I'm telling the truth. That's it. This is what I've heard all my life. This is what I believe to be true. And if I had to take a lie detector test and the outcome of that test, based upon my honesty, was you either tell the truth or you die, I would say, this is what I know to be the truth. That's it. So, my friends, that's it for today. This plot is going to really start to thicken and thicken and thicken. And you know what? Thank you, President Trump. Really, thank you. It's owed to the American people to find out how a beloved president by the people was assassinated. 60 some odd years later, we still don't have the truth. We have answers, but we don't have the truth. So I thank President Kennedy for doing this. I'm going to thank him with RFK, and I'm going to thank him with MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., because I think there's some things there that are kind of shady also. We deserve to know the truth. These were very important people of substance in our lives, and we need to know the truth. So, for all those of you out there that, want to continue to knock Trump, he is keeping good on all of his campaign promises. Everything he said he was going to do, he is trying to do, attempting to do. Of course, the left is fighting him, but he's doing it as best as he can. The price of eggs are even coming down the last couple of days, and a lot of stuff going on. I'm not going to get into the politics. So that's it, my friends. How do I always leave you? But remember, there's going to be more to this before I go. Going to be more. I'm going to start reading the classified documents. I can't get into all of this on YouTube. It takes too long and people are not going to enjoy it. If you want to really know this and follow this along with me, because I am very intrigued by it, then join my platform. Join my membership platform. Believe me, people, it's not going to break you. And if you're not interested, that's okay. But you know what? People are loving it. I'm telling you. And this is a whole new phase of it that we're going to be doing. And we'll do the same probably with RFK and the same with MLK. We deserve these answers. We're going to get into it in detail. Just click on the link below. Jump into the platform. You're going to hear it in detail. We're going to go through this. And I think, it's going to be very, very good information from my perspective. And I think I've given you my perspective right now. So jump on the link, michaelfranzese.com/family. Join the family. We have well over 1,000 people in this and growing from all over the world. You want to make relationships? This is the place to go. It's a community of like-minded people that are benefiting from one another. And you're going to hear stuff you're not going to hear anywhere else because nobody else has my perspective, people, and nobody else has my involvement. And I thank all of you for enjoying what I have to say. That's it for today, my friends. How do I always leave you? Same way, never going to change. Be safe, be healthy. God bless each and every one of you, your families, your communities, your neighborhoods, your loved ones. God bless America. And yes, we'll see you next time. Take care.